Okay, here's our deep canvassing training. So why are we making calls? Our goal is to understand our personal stake. Our goal is to make calls tonight to voters who are still conflicted and not sure of who they're voting for, and to persuade them to vote for VP Harris and to motivate people to take action and vote. The core of this work is being clear on what is at stake for us and our loved ones in this moment. We want to make sure we're connecting with people about the stakes of this election. So it's important for you to think about what is at stake for you in this election so you can bring that into the deep canvassing calls. So what is deep canvassing? Deep canvassing is a conversation methodology that uses compassion, curiosity, and storytelling to move people towards empathy and understanding on complex issues. Deep canvassing has a track record of impact. This is about sharing stories and listening versus arguing about facts and figures. There's a large body of evidence that shows that deep canvassing is one of the most effective and lasting ways to persuade people on contentious issues, and that the effects can actually last for months. We're pioneering this method to help persuade people in elections around candidates, but this has started with campaigns around LGBTQ rights and has since become the only tactic that is scientifically proven to be able to lastingly reduce prejudice, inoculate people against right-wing messaging, and change hearts and minds on many of our society's toughest and most divisive issues, which is what we're dealing with when we call people about this current election. Now we're going to hear an example of a conversation of the script we will be using tonight, and you'll be able to follow along on how this is going to look on your computer when you use the dialer. Afterwards, we'll go over the structure of the conversation.
Hi, is this Kate?
Yes, who's this?
Hey, Kate, my name is Matthew. I'm a volunteer with Citizen Action Wisconsin. We're a local community organization, and we're just talking to people all across the state right now about how, different people are struggling to make ends meet and what's on the top of people's minds right now when we think about our future and going forward. But I wanted to ask, like, how are you? What's going on for you? And like, what's at top of mind for you right now?
Can I just first ask, like, how did you get my number?
Yeah, so it's all publicly available data that comes from the voter file. But we're not trying to sell anything, or we won't be like selling your data to anyone after this either.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Yeah, let me think. I don't know. I feel like what's going on for me? I don't know. Like, what do you mean? I mean, a lot's going on.
Yeah, I think just like a lot of people that we've talked to across the state have mentioned like groceries getting more expensive or wages stagnating or healthcare costs that have really been difficult, but just kind of issues like that that people have been talking about. Do any of those resonate with you at all?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like groceries are definitely getting super, super expensive for me. I just like feel like it's been really, really expensive to like get the food every week. And yeah, I feel like my wages are pretty good. Like I'm a vet, but I feel like there's a lot of people in my town, like friends of mine, who feel like their wages are like not good enough to like get other everything that they need. And so that's something that I feel worried about.
Yeah. And how does that make you feel? How has that affected you and your family?
I mean, I care about like the people that I'm friends with, where I live, and it makes me feel mad because I feel like Um, I don't know exactly why it's happening, but I feel like a lot of people are talking about like that all these like immigrants that are coming in, like these like, the migrant thing, that people are getting like free housing and like gift cards when they come in, and maybe that's the reason that people's wages are so low is because we're like putting money, all this money like into paying immigrants to come here basically. So that makes me feel, I guess just sort of frustrated because it feels like everyone should be able to get that type of help.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you for sharing, Kate. But yeah, no, there's a lot of frustrations and a lot of different information that we're hearing regarding how to fix these problems. So I also wanted to ask you, like, do you plan to vote in November?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, like you were saying, a lot of people are looking for answers to like these complex issues, and things seem to be getting less affordable and less accessible for lots of people. So we're having these conversations about how we can move forward and like fix these situations. So I wanted to ask you, like, when you think of who you are voting for in the November election, if you had to put yourself on a scale, where one is definitely voting for President or former President Trump, and 10 is definitely voting for Vice President Harris. Where do you think you'd put yourself right now?
Um, I don't know, maybe like a five.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Why do you feel like a five? Why do you feel like you're seems like you're right in the middle, huh? What
Yeah, I just feel like both of the candidates don't seem like that great. Like I typically have voted before Republican and I voted for Trump before, but I just feel like um I don't know, I just feel like some of the stuff that he's been saying and just like who he is as like a person, like I just don't actually know like if he seems like that great of a candidate anymore, like everything that's happened like in all of his criminal cases, but also like I just can't imagine voting for Vice President Harris because I just never voted for a Democrat and I also feel like she's so progressive. Like it seems like, she wants the whole country to like maybe I don't know, just change so much. And I feel like a lot of people talk about she's like a socialist and she basically wants to like give all of the money to like people who don't have jobs. And I don't know, it just feels like both candidates aren't really like looking out for like regular people, like people that are like vets or have, jobs where they're not making a ton of money. And so I just can't really tell if either of them like really are going to be good for the job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing, Kate. I mean, I feel like that's where a lot of people are. Like, there's so much information and so much back and forth that
Mhm.
it's easy to get lost with both candidates and see, all the flaws. But I think what's important about these conversations is bringing it back to like how people like me and you move forward. So,
Mhm.
like, I know you had mentioned like your family's well-beings and stuff like that. Uh, what do you think like would make these situations better? Like, how do you think we move forward and get out of some of like the back and forth and all the confusion and just like focus on the issues that matter to our families, like regular people like us?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I wish that I just really could understand more like what they're actually going to do, like not hear like what people think that they're going to do, but like actually know like to me what matters is like I would want groceries to be cheaper, I'd want my healthcare to be cheaper, like I'd want my neighbors to feel safe and to like have good jobs and also like not get their jobs taken away by anyone coming in and just like general stuff that we all need. Like I wish there was just a clear understanding of like what that is and what each of the candidates actually are going to do. Because, I watched some of the debate and it was just actually hard to tell what either of them are going to do. So, yeah, I feel like that would sort of like cut through some of the whatever is happening.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's hard and it's confusing. And like, so I'm personally calling because I'm like a 9 or 10 for Harris, and I'm doing this work because the clearest like example for me about who wants what and who's on the side of who is when we look at public institutions. Like for me, I'm personally in Texas, and I've just seen like this agenda that Trump and people like him are pushing, especially on gutting public schools and just how harmful it is. Like that to me seems super clear that they are continuing to benefit the richest of the rich and the people who can afford private schools and the people who can afford super fancy like private hospitals. And they're continuing to gut stuff that like me and you use, like public schools and Medicare and Medicaid and all of these things
Mhm.
uh, that have made such a big impact in my life and the people in my family's lives. And so the clearest way for me to see like whose side we're on. Like the people I don't want to be a part of. I don't want to live in an administration that continues to gut public things and make a world for like the ultra rich and the ultra powerful. But what do you think about that?
I mean, I like the idea of them being able to protect stuff like Medicare. I mean, my parents are on Medicare and I also have kids in public school, so I definitely don't want those cut. But like, I guess the only thing I'm curious, like you said, you live in Texas, like I guess I'm just curious, like, would there be more money for things like public schools and like that? Like, no matter who is president, but if Trump was president, he's saying that the reason that public schools are failing is because like we're giving so much money to immigrants, you know? So, like, is that something that Harris is like gonna be dealing with, or, you know, how does she feel about that?
Yeah, and I think that that's like such a good example of us trying to the intention of us having to fight each other. I'm in El Paso, Texas, actually. So I work at an office that's maybe 5 minutes walking from the border,
Mhm.
and it is like wild to see how much of it is just straight up manufactured. Like
Mm,
it is not a crisis here in El Paso, and this is one of the biggest ports of entry in the country.
mm,
There's definitely like not gift cards being handed out as people come in. There's not like free stuff or free housing being given out here.
mm,
Uh it's like people who are coming and are looking to make their lives better and work and contribute. Uh but I think it's super normal for people to feel like we have to fight each other and I think that that's how we move forward is it the people who are having to leave everything and come here's fault that the systems aren't working for people like me and you, or is
mm.
it the people who have actually like created and benefited the system from the systems for a really long time? And I think that's kind of what this election is about. Like, do we keep letting the super rich and the super powerful dictate everything and then have us fight each other for the scraps that they leave us? But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that that's really good to hear. I mean, if you live there, I don't live in El Paso, so it's just good to hear that like that isn't happening. So maybe that's just, you know, something, maybe that's something that I would need to rethink. Maybe that actually isn't happening. Maybe like I need to do my own research that makes me feel like stressed about the misinformation, but it's good. Yeah, just thank you for sharing. I thought that that was what was happening down there in Texas. So,
Yeah, no, it's wild. I mean, we've made a bunch of these calls, and I think a lot of people are seeing it, and it's really good to think about like who's benefiting from this, like who's benefiting when the people who aren't controlling the systems and the people who don't have like abundance of everything are fighting, like who benefits from that system. And uh I think
mhm.
that's like a good way to think about it. But the misinformation is wild and like definitely encourage you to continue doing your own research and everything. But wanted to come back to that same scale I asked you at the beginning,
Mhm.
where if you had to vote tomorrow and you had to put yourself on that scale where one is definitely voting for Trump and 10 is definitely voting for Harris, where do you think you would put yourself right now?
I guess I'd put myself at an 8.
Mm. Yeah, that's awesome. Why do you feel like that's the right number for you?
I mean, I feel like the reason I felt like I didn't want Harris is because I thought that she was going to give everything away to like immigrants, and I thought that that was what was already happening. So now the fact that I heard that, like everyone should be able to have a fair chance, and you know, maybe what we've been hearing actually isn't true. So I feel like, you know, if she's going to protect schools and you know, isn't giving all the jobs away and is also like wanting to protect things like Medicare. I'm down for that. Like I'm gonna eventually hopefully want to use that too as I get older. So I think that's why.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Kate. I really appreciated the conversation. And we want to follow up with you closer to the election, but appreciate all your insights and hope to talk to you soon.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate.
All right. I hope as you were listening, you were hearing how Matthew was handling the conversation and how Matthew was asking Kate a lot of questions, trying to make connections, sharing his stories. and also just not judging and not calling Kate out when there was, disinformation she was hearing, but really building a relationship and building a connection. Because, oops, as we know, facts, opinions, arguing, that isn't what persuades people. We need people processing their conflicts and life experiences. That's what moves people. I can't think of an important issue in my life where I've been moved with someone yelling facts at me. It's sharing stories and sharing experiences that helps me move on issues. So let's talk about the structure of deep canvassing. It's basically a structure for having a conversation. We're going to have a script, and I highly recommend you follow the script to begin with, but it really is a guide. Once you get used to having the conversations, it's really about sharing your story and being curious and allowing the voter to share their stories. So we basically have a beginning, a middle, and an end of the script. So in the beginning, you are building rapport. So how do you build rapport with someone? You smile when you dial. People can hear if you're smiling for sure. You want to share something personal in the first minute. Like if you hear a dog barking or if you hear kids in the background, you want to note that. But also people may just want to get right into it. So that's fine. They'll want to know why you're calling, and that's fine. So you jump right into it, and ask them what are the issues they're concerned about. But also, uh, the beginning of the script is where you're asking them on the 1 to 10 scale where they would put themselves. And this is really important. And so the script is very clear on this on a scale of 1 to 10. If 1 is supporting former President Trump and 10 is supporting Vice President Harris and 5 is somewhere in the middle, where would you put yourself? And then asking, why is that the right number for you? And then you get into the middle of the script, which is really the meat of the conversation, where we're sharing stories, sharing what's at stake for us in this election, but also hearing from the voter what's at stake for them. So the key here is being curious and listening with compassionate curiosity, using why questions, asking people how these issues impact their lives. Being curious helps us understand what's holding the voter back from being fully supportive of what we want them to do. Next, we share our stories and our experience with the voters. And this is the most important part of the script. We want to have conversations that touch on real life experiences and our genuine feelings. And so you do that by thinking about what is motivating you to show up today? What really is at stake for you in this election? So on this slide, you see 2 examples of how to approach this. One, I'm worried about my daughters not having abortion access, especially in an emergency situation. That's not the worst, that's personal, but getting into like a story and experiences is even better. So the second one, when I think about a Trump presidency, I think about my family member, my mother, my father, my daughter who had blank experience. And it makes me feel, and bringing feelings into this is key as well, makes me feel blank, and the risk to myself, my family is too great for that to happen. So that's the middle. You're really sharing and having a back and forth with the person. And then finally, at the end of the script is where people are beginning to process their conflict. You heard Kate hearing what Matthew was saying, and that was changing, like she was basically processing out loud how that was changing what she was thinking about this election. So we need to let people talk, but we also need to go back to the 1 to 10 scale and ask them where they are now, if they would rate themselves differently. One thing to think about is what is the issue they brought up at the beginning of the conversation, and you want to go back to that at the end of the call if that hasn't been touched upon. So for this particular phone bank, we are calling people likely to share our values or they're conflicted. There are still conflicted people in this race. We're calling multiracial and working class voters, and we are calling into Pennsylvania. So who do we want to spend time with? We are not looking to spend time and move ones and twos, people who are hardcore with Trump. Like at this point, they've made up their mind. If we have a conversation, we may actually move them to remember to go vote, and let's not do that. We also don't need to spend much time with people who are 100% Harris. So in both cases, just have get the rating and have quick conversations and say, thank you very much. Remind the Harris voters to go out and vote and end the call. We're really spending time with threes to eights, people who are conflicted, and we want to get into those deep canvassing conversations. Uh, so again, ones and twos, I have tried to move people who are ones and twos. They are not moving right now. And nines and tens, we don't need to move them. They're with us. Also, don't spend time talking to people who are different than the ones listed. We really want to reach out to these registered voters in the swing states to get them out to vote. So aim for these interactions to be less than 2 minutes. I have spent 20 minutes with a one and I regret it. Um, and just to name, you don't have to be a policy expert on every issue in this election. This is about your lived experiences and bringing those lived experiences into the phone calls. And if you've been on these calls, you know this, there might be a lot of hangups. People are getting inundated in these swing states. So maybe they're rude. Maybe they're not normally rude. Maybe they are normally rude, but there might be a lot of hangups. You just got to keep your chin up, keep smiling while you dial. This is a game of centimeters right now. So if you move one or two people in this shift, then you maybe have helped make the difference because this is really, we need to be moving these undecided voters. All right, so we will be using the Scale to Win dialer, which is an automatic dialer tool. This means you'll only get connected once someone has answered the call. So you're not dialing numbers, people aren't seeing your phone number. It is the computer and the system that's doing it. There are two ways to do this. We recommend the best way to do this is use the device, like your computer or your tablet, for the script and use your phone for audio. So this right down here at the bottom, call with this device and phone for audio. And what they'll have you do is call into a number and follow the instructions. And once you call into that number, you still have time you won't be on calls right away. And if you call with your computer, you'll need to allow Scale to Win to use your microphone. So allow that to happen. If you're on your phone for the dialer, your phone number will not be shared with voters. And if you choose this route, you will need to dial the number, like I said. And when you end a call, don't hang up your phone. If you need a break from the calls, you can hang up your phone, but then you'll want to call back in. But again, it will not dial until you say you're ready to make calls. You'll have a script in front of you and you'll be clicking off different things. So if someone asks to be taken off the list, or if they're rude, then mark refused. When we mark refused, they're taken off the list. If they hang up kind of before hearing your voice, if they're busy at the moment, if they can't talk for some reason, if they're having dinner, then just click call back later. So don't overuse refused because we're then removing people from this list. And we want to stay on Zoom together during this time. So we can share our victories and we can be around for tech support and other things. One way to do that is you don't want to hear us talking, so you want to leave computer audio when for the Zoom once you start making phone calls. Don't do it now, but once you start making phone calls and you basically go to the caret next to your microphone button, your mute button, and you leave computer audio. And this way you won't, while you're making calls, don't do it now, but once you're making calls, you won't be able to hear us. So now it is time to make calls in pods. We're going to stick together in Zoom rooms while we're doing this. Your pod and small group leader will provide your links, and you're going to get to practice in a small group.